I asked 6 FPL experts what their number one tip is for a good start to this FPL season. I'm going to reveal what they said exclusively in this video. If you want to see more of their content, I'll put the links in the description. It's worth giving them a follow at the end of the video.
Hi everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey. So I guess my one bit of advice to start the season with would be to act on the information that we can trust and rely on wherever possible. So I think at the start of the season, there are a lot of moving parts, new managers, new systems, and new players to the league. And whilst it can be really tempting, and obviously there's plenty of opportunity there with the new systems and new players in particular, there more often than not is a bedding in period. And sometimes the shiny new object doesn't end up being quite as promising as we first thought it would be. Obviously, there are exceptions to this rule. There will be players that come into the league straight away, Erling Haaland being a great example, and absolutely tear it up from game week 1. And often you can kind of get a bit of an instinct for those sort of players and those sort of teams and systems. But I think generally speaking, it's easier or safer to err on the side of caution, go with what we know, go for managers and systems and players that we have loads of data on, that we know exactly how they're going to play, how they're going to fit in. We can guarantee they're going to get really strong minutes. Perhaps we even know that they're on set pieces or penalties. Those are the players that can near enough guarantee you a solid start to the season. Maybe sprinkle in the odd risk here or there. Maybe 1 or 2 isn't such a bad thing where you've got a really good gut instinct on it. But generally speaking, make sure that you fill out the base of your 11 with solid picks that you know are going to be reliable for the first few game weeks until we get more of an understanding of the shape of the season, which teams are going to be on the upwards trajectory, which players are going to be the hot new thing this year. Those narratives will start forming after a few game weeks, and taking those punts in game week 1 can often, or at least too many of those punts in game week 1 can often lead to problems down the line. So that would be my advice. Obviously, feel free to take a few risks, but not too many. Make sure you have filled out your side with enough solid, reliable picks to get you off to a good start.
Hi guys, it's FPL Nima here. Thank you at FPL Prem Tipster for inviting me on to give some preseason content this year. Great guy, great rank history. But importantly, let's move on to my number one top tip going into the new FPL season ahead of game week 1. So this one for me is all about decision making. And what I would look at is try to analyze when you have kind of made a good decision that ended up with a bad outcome versus when you've made a bad decision that had a good outcome. Now, the reason I advise this tip is because it's important to not knee jerk and rush changing your style of play because something doesn't work out when perhaps, 1 out of 10 times it doesn't work out, and it just happens to be that time that you made that decision. It's very tough because as human beings, we're very inclined to think every time we do well, right, is because of like a good decision we made and how great we are. And whenever we don't do well, we think we were just unlucky. So I just kind of say that as my number one tip. It's a bit of a game theory meta tip, which is to try and stick to the way you want to play and remember why you made the decisions you made. Or, if you're going to sell someone, ask yourself, are the reasons you bought them still relevant? If no longer the case, then yeah, okay, perhaps you can sell that without considering it just a knee jerk. But yeah, that's my kind of thoughts on that. Let me know what you guys think, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of exciting tips from FPL Prem Tipster's channel this season.
Hello everyone, it's Tom from Golden Goal here. My number one tip for starting the season in FPL would be patience. Spend a lot of time thinking long and hard about the players you pick in your team at the start of the season. Then if one of them goes, say, 2 or 3 weeks without getting a return, you'll be very quick to want to get rid of them. But I would say stick with them. You pick them for a reason, and sometimes you have to just hold them through the rough times because sod's law, right? As soon as you sell them, they'll return or haul the next week. So I would say number one underappreciated skill in FPL is just patience. Yeah, it really pays off, right? I think back to Jared Bowen last season as an example, right? He got injured. He was amber flagged for a couple of game weeks last season. A lot of people sold him who owned him at the time. And he actually played the same week that he was amber flagged and scored a goal. And, people would have used a transfer, brought in a player that didn't necessarily even score any points that week. Whereas I just kept my patience, kept hold of Jared Bowen, and he scored, got me the points, and I had a transfer in hand. Particularly with the way FPL is working this season, when you can accumulate up to 5 transfers, I think patience is really going to pay off.
So my number one tip for FPL managers for the start of this season would be to use betting odds. I started doing it towards the back end of last season and picked it up and kind of continued with it throughout the Euro fantasy game as well. Looking at which teams were obviously, backed by the bookmakers to get clean sheets, obviously players scoring as well, because they do research. It's their job. And as, kind of anyone who's ever done any research into gambling knows, the house always wins. They do their research, they do their due diligence, if you like, on obviously players, teams, data. It's very rare that they get things wrong, and especially if you use the data for the Euro fantasy game, pretty much all the kind of things and the statistics that they were basing on was pretty much accurate as you're going to get. So for me, my number one advice is going to be use obviously betting data, but do it responsibly.
Hey, FPL Fran here. The only tip that I have is to try to stick to your logic of purchasing a player. That doesn't mean holding on to a player forever. It means that if you bought a player because they had good minutes, they were playing in a certain position, if their data was good, then keep that even if the player isn't returning immediately. The only situation where I would start moving off of player is if things like the minutes drop or the position changes. And that's where you suddenly have to move off because the logic of buying a player has suddenly disappeared.
Hi guys, this is Abdul, aka FPL Salah, and if I was to give one bit of advice for FPL, it would be fixtures over form. We've seen historically that fixtures definitely matter, even for some of the best players in the world, like Haaland and your Salahs. So always think about the fixtures when you're planning your transfers, or even your wild cards. Look out for those fixture swings, and then try and adjust your transfers around them.
To top it off, my number one tip for a good start to this FPL season would be to build a captaincy matrix like what you can see on the screen. Now this isn't my current one because it might spoil one of my future best captain videos. But the point is to project ahead what your captain is probably going to be for each game week. Then you can decide what premium players you're going to have. So using the example on the screen, I would definitely buy Haaland and Salah in a team with these captains. However, if I wasn't to captain Salah in the first game week, I would probably go without him for the first few game weeks and then bring him in game week 4 using this example. The subscribers will already know, but for those of you who are new around here, I do have a strong captaincy record because I put a lot of effort into my best captain videos, carry out a lot of data analysis. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss them. I can guarantee I will improve your captaincy record. The game week 1 best captain video will be published this week. Let's see if I can carry on that strong record. It's Salah, Saka and Isak in the running. I think it's going to be a difficult decision. Also, make sure you don't miss my Game Week 1 team selection video. That'll be published this week as well. I hope all these expert tips helped you. Thanks for watching.